Yeah, so we're about to go live right now. So it's gonna jump on our feed when we go live.
We there? Hello?
Is anybody with us? Yeah, I think we're streaming live right now.
Yeah, we sure are. All right. Yeah, we got
See us?
3 people so far.
Okay.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning, Facebook. We're coming in with our first official broadcast on Prison Reform Live. And so I'm here with my co-host, J. Daniel Gum from Forgiven Felons. And we just want to have just a candid conversation today on prison reform. We really feel like there's a lack of awareness. And so one of the reasons why we really wanted to do this broadcast today was, man, there's so many gaps in prison reform that are not being talked about. And so as we are both former, what do you want to call this?
We were inmates.
We were inmates, you know.
We were inmates. There's nothing wrong with being inmates because there's a lot of inmates in the New Testament that did a lot of great things. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
And like you said, as former inmates, we have an inside track on where we're lacking on the inside. We've come a long way on the inside, but we still have a long way to go in how we develop leaders, restoration instead of punitive. And then we have a lot of gaps on the outside as well.
Right.
You know, when they get out, how do we continue to water those seeds that were sown in prison? How do we continue to develop those leaders on the outside as we were trying to do on the inside?
Right. And so there's many growth gaps in prison reform, but today we probably want to just focus on a few different areas. So allow me to start off by talking about faith in prison. And what I mean by that is,
okay, can I just stop us real quick? People on my feed don't know who you are and what you do. So explain what you do, just like the 2-minute version of where you've come from, what you do, and why we're here together.
Okay, so for the people on Jay Daniel's feed, my name is Twan Nguyen. I am a member of the John Maxwell team. Just like Jay, I have been incarcerated 3 times, and I've had faith throughout the whole journey. I mean, I literally, when I get into prison, I seem to always flourish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I don't know, and I don't know what it is. I realize my calling when I'm in prison, but I had that struggle every time I got out of just losing my self-worth, losing my value, and I always found myself going back to prison. And so this last time down, God just literally transformed my life. And the missing element this time, people ask me this all the time, like, I mean, what's the difference now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's simple. I'm confident. I know who I am now. And it all started because I had a vision for my life. And one thing I've realized, Jay, is you know what great leaders do? Great leaders can cultivate vision in a person's life.
Yeah.
That was the biggest difference I have now, is because I got out now with a vision. I came in without a vision. And so prior to leaving, I had a destination on where I was going, who I needed to connect with, what I had to do to get there. And that vision has been my driving force to join not only the John Maxwell team, but to make an impact on prison culture, because I know the problem now that I was sent on earth to solve. Is that good enough?
That's good. And just 1 minute of what do you do for a living? And do you have a nonprofit? Any of that?
So I recently launched a nonprofit called the Prison Transformation Initiative, which is geared towards leadership development in the prison culture and also training up church leaders to equip better prison ministries on coming in. I really believe that's the missing piece. Is so many prison ministries come in there and the preaching and teaching is great.
Yeah.
But where's the leadership?
Yeah.
I've seen so many men operate at a high level of faith, but they have no leadership skills.
And there's a difference.
Right.
Jesus taught a lot of people.
Right.
But he honed in on a few on the leadership skills.
Absolutely.
And if that's missing, then people are gonna keep coming back.
Absolutely.
And we don't want them to go back and wearing white.
Right.
We want them to go back wearing normal clothes.
Wearing a forgiven felon's shirt.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you, Juan, for letting everybody know that who's on my feed that who you are and why we connected. And we did connect because I did sign up for the John Maxwell team, and everybody and their dogs started connecting us together. And I'm glad they did. They saw the value that we could bring to each other, but also together the impact we could make on prison reform, every aspect of prison reform. So I've been out 13 and a half years, and we've been doing the transitional house, the parole side of it. And so that's where my heart is too, to see that when the guys come out after they get the leadership skills, they come out. And then my goal is to continue that and further that when they get out. So that's why we're here. That's why we're together. Other than that, I don't know any other reason why you would see a good looking Asian with an ugly white boy talking about prison. So.
Right. And you know what this reminds me of is, you guys seen the movie called Lethal Weapon? Yeah, this is what you call Lethal Weapon. And I'm not gonna highlight our guns or nothing like that, because that's not what this broadcast is actually for. But we want to talk about prison reform. We want to talk about just having a candid, open conversation. You guys are welcome to comment and ask any kind of questions. But I really want to talk about the faith aspect, and what I saw was something that was lacking. Where I came from, the faith aspect wasn't missing. I mean, we literally had, the gospel being preached to us almost on a daily basis. We had radio broadcasts that we could tune in and listen to dynamic sermons on a day-to-day basis. And once again, the biggest difference for me was when I got out, I didn't feel valued.
Yeah.
And the reason why is, when I remember my second time getting out of prison, my mom and my dad had literally concealed that part of my life, meaning that they had, I'm just be honest.
They were ashamed.
They were ashamed.
Yeah.
I mean, Asian people don't go to prison.
There's not very many of them in there.
Yeah, there's not like too many Asian gangs. So I ended up joining a predominantly Mexican gang with like a few white boys in there. I'm not gonna go into it. But yeah, the Asian people hardly go to jail. And so you don't even see most Asians on the radar. But my parents literally hid that part. So I got out of prison literally conforming to this lie that I was never in prison, right, and I was away in college or something.
Wow. And that's what some people call it. Even when they get out and they're talking about it out in public,
right,
they'll say I was, gone on vacation, or I was gone to college. And although it was a great learning time, it definitely wasn't college. But yeah, I run into that too. My mom was like me. She wasn't ashamed. She was embarrassed a little bit probably, but she wasn't afraid to tell people that that's where I was.
Right.
And that's the reason now where I'll just tell everybody I kind of regret doing some of the things I did, but now that I see I don't use it as rejection, or I don't use it as regret anymore. I use it as leverage to advance the kingdom. So.
Right. And I want to share this. So looking back, I want you guys to pay attention to this, okay? Coming out of prison, not only are we dealing with shame and guilt, because society often looks at returning citizens or prisoners a certain way, right? So listen to this. The way people see you is the way they treat you.
Yep.
And the way people treat you is how most people often become. Think about how powerful this is based on the way you see people. You treat them a certain way. And for a returning citizen that's coming out of prison, you automatically perceive them in a certain way. So it's very hard to make me feel important when deep down inside you feel like I'm a nobody. Let me say it again. It's very hard to make me feel important like I'm somebody when deep down inside you see me as a nobody, because guess what? It shows in your actions. It does. And that's what so much we put this mask on.
Yeah.
That I didn't come from prison. The shame and the guilt. And because that fear of how society is going to receive us. Share a story about that time where, you remember the story we were talking about, how someone reached out to you and asked you to get.
Yeah. So when I got out, I was mentoring this high school kid, and his parents asked me to watch their house over the weekend, over an 11-day vacation. They're going to Hawaii, and they said, "Hey, we'd like for you to house sit for us." And they were very well off. They had a very nice house, and they were gone for 11 days. And he said, "We just want you to watch over our house, watch over all of our valuables, and also deposit checks." His business got checks sent to his house, and so he's like, "Can you deposit those in the bank for me?" And I was like, "Sure." And I'd only been out of prison maybe 4 to 6 months. And I'd been mentoring him maybe 3, the little kid, the teenager. And all of a sudden I told the guy, I said, "Look, you've known me less than a year. You've known me less than almost 6 months. And you're asking me to watch over your house," which I think at that time was valued at 600,000. That was back in 2008 when everything crashed. It's probably worth well over that now. And then he asked me to handle all the money that came through his business, and it was quite a bit of money that month. And I just told him, I said, "Look, I don't know why you felt compelled to do that, but I thank you for not seeing me as somebody that you couldn't trust." And he looked at me and he said, "I didn't know you back when you did all your stuff that sent you to prison. All I know is the person you are now to us and to our family and to our son. And so I don't even see you as a felon." And that spoke volumes to me. And the reason he didn't see me as a felon is because I didn't see myself as a felon.
Right.
And a lot of guys get out.
That's good. A
lot of guys get out and they see themselves as a felon, mainly because the prison system and society does. Right. So a lot of times it's easy for us to just see ourselves the way others see us.
Right.
And we don't intentionally, there's that word, you got to be intentional.
Right.
We're not intentional about how we see ourselves, because if we see ourselves differently, then we can change the narrative, and we could go from people seeing us as a number to somebody who has a name.
Right.
You know what I mean? So,
that's interesting, because I listen to Dr. Miles Monroe a lot, and he speaks about having this mindset. Okay. I just we had a lunch meeting with the CEO of Prison Entrepreneurship Program, Brian Kelly.
Great guy.
Yeah. He has a dynamic story, but his view on prison reform is re-entrepreneurship, meaning that one of the keys to prison reform is helping inmates develop a plan, a business plan. Because for most of us getting out, we have this low-level mindset of being an employee. I didn't have that. I got out and I said, you know what? I'm greater than that. God has placed something so valuable inside me. There's so much potential inside me. I got to tap into it. And that's why I decided, you know what? I'm going to step outside of the employee mindset, and I'm going to be an employer.
Right.
And there's a big difference when you leave prison with that mindset that I am a business owner. I can be greater. And not only that, I'm a leader.
Yep.
I'm a leader. I am a leader. Let me share this with you. For you guys that are in prison ministry, one thing that I used to always stress to the guys in my class in the leadership was, don't ever use this platform of leadership to impose your faith. You don't need to. And the reason why is when you impose your faith, people put their guard up. And there's already enough people in prison ministry imposing their faith on a day-to-day basis. But one thing I've realized, Jay, is when you speak on leadership and you can draw that thing out of a person, they get captivated by it. Because in every single man in prison, there's a leadership hunger in each and every single one of them.
That's what we were created for.
Absolutely. We're craving for significance. We're looking for a sense of worth and value. And I'm not saying that you're going to be a leader at a high capacity where you're going to be speaking to thousands. You're going to lead, number one, your family. You're going to lead yourself. You have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead anybody else. Absolutely. That's the hardest person to lead, is ourselves. And out of the 10 years that I've been incarcerated, never a leadership course, never leadership development. Everything was strictly on, hey, you're an addict. You got to modify your behavior. Let's work on this. And some of the programs in there were just absolutely they're dreadful. I mean, they were dreadful. I mean, I went to class literally just waiting for these things to just be over. And I'm like, man.
Well, some of the classes I took that I had to take before I made parole,
right,
that were going to cause me to have a successful reentry, were not dreadful because we talked about sports. And I love sports.
Right.
But these are the classes that the state puts out there, like changes, life skills. And I'm sure there's some teachers across the state that do take their job seriously in teaching those classes, but they weren't at my unit. And all we did was talk about sports. There wasn't even, not even leadership, not even just regular ship.
Right.
it was not, I mean, but it was fun, but it wasn't helping me.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right, though. There's nothing. I mean, you take away all the programs that Prison Fellowship, PEP, all the volunteers that go in on a regular weekly basis. If you take away all those programs and all you have left is what the state offers,
right?
What do you have?
Nothing.
Zero.
Nothing.
Zero.
I mean, prison reform is the only thing that's keeping prison reform alive is the volunteers that have a heart for prison ministry. Yeah. And I think even in this next season of prison reform, I think it can always get better. And I think that's why me and Jay just came to collaborate on this. And really, the main reason why I joined the John Maxwell team was, number one, I saw the greatest need in prison reform outside of the faith was the leadership development in a person's life. I believe that coaching, prison coaching is going to be the key element, because you have to learn how. I love sharing this story because we're going to segue into a motto of Jesus's leadership, right? So I share this story a lot because it's foundational now in my leadership. And it talks about how John Maxwell, in the launch of the John Maxwell Company, he hired a consultant by the name of Bob Bill to come in. And when Bob came in for the first 2 days of training, all Bob did, you know what he did? He just asked questions. I mean, he asked questions after questions, questions after questions. And John said, this guy probably asked me about 500 questions. And finally he said, hold up, Bob, I'm paying you a lot of money to be asking me questions. Why so many questions? And you know what Bob said? Bob said, I got to find you first before I can lead you. And let me say that one more time. I have to find you first before I can lead you. And for so many people, it's the complete opposite. We never focus on finding a person. We focus on telling a person and teaching and correcting instead of connecting. And that's such a big gap, because it's one thing for you to draw that out of me. And so, and I think that's why we have such a strong investment now in prison transformational coaching, because that's the key. You get a person to own their words, and you draw. It's something powerful, Jay, when you get to hear yourself say the answer.
Yeah.
You know,
you're right. Yeah. If any of you have any questions throughout the hour, we'll be on till almost 11. If you have any questions, just ask it in the comment and we'll address it. But in the meantime, we're going to keep talking about some topics that are very important to us and that we think are pivotal and integral to prison reform, all aspects of prison reform, even the judicial side of it, where they're sending people to prison. Twan, I got an application from a guy who wants to come to our transitional houses, and he had no other charges other than 5 DWIs.
Right.
You know, and sometimes guys will think that a different location will change everything. This guy had, and they say in their letters all the time, you know, I need to get away from Abilene. I need to come to Dallas because I don't need to be around those old people. I need to get away from here. I need to get away from there. I don't need to go back there. And so they think their geography is the most important part in their change.
Right.
And this one guy had 5 DWIs in 5 different counties.
Wow.
So he knew that he wanted change, and he was trying to move away from the other people that he thought was the problem. But every county he went to, he got, and on his 5th DWI, I have 5 DWIs.
Right.
On his 5th DWI, he got a life sentence,
Wow.
basically 99 years. That guy, because every time he goes to prison, there's no treatment program that is truly effectively helping him.
Right.
When he gets out, there's no truly effective treatment program on parole that's helping him. So, and they're not asking the right questions.
Right. That's it.
They're not asking the right questions. They're asking questions like, why do you still drink?
Right.
Why are you getting drunk? Why are you drinking and driving?
Right.
Those aren't restorative questions. Those aren't questions of transformation.
Right.
And so I like the way you said earlier, man. Leaders ask good questions.
Right.
And so
let me try to share this real quick, because we want to tie this to actually a reference, because I believe this is important. And so once again, looking at the model of leadership that we're following now in being prison transformational coaches, how can we be more effective in this next season of prison reform? And I'm sharing this with you because a lot of people have a heart for prison ministry, but a lot of people go at it at the wrong angle.
Right.
I think one of the common views of prison ministry is I got to go in there with a dynamic team and I got to bring a great word. Well, yes, that is part of it, but there's another missing element of it, where preaching has to come to where there's discipleship and mentorship, and leadership has to be cultivated there.
Yeah.
And so once again, here we're looking at good leaders ask great questions. What's the great question you're not asking us? You know, what's the great question that you're not asking us? Let's look at this right here. Jesus asked over 300 questions in the New Testament. He only answered 3 of them. And not only that, he answered some of them with another question. And the Bible says that counsel in the heart of man is like deep waters, but it takes a man of understanding, one that can listen and connect, to draw that thing out of him. It's not a matter of you telling me what I need to be doing, because that becomes more than likely a borrowed belief.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I dealt with borrowed belief. I dealt with borrowed faith so long in my life because no one asked me the right questions. I grew up chasing other people's dreams because my parents, I hope they're not listening to this right now, but forgive me, Mom, if you're watching the broadcast now. My parents, I grew up from a high performance driven Asian culture. And if you guys are Asian, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Literally, they planned my life, meaning that this is what you're going to be. You're going to be a doctor. You're going to make 6 figures. This is what success is. And I grew up a life of just comparison.
Yeah. And
I lacked leadership. So growing up, no one ever asked me, Twan, what is your dream? What is your vision? What are you good at? Like, these questions were never asked. And so many of us go to prison because we never had a dream. Education didn't make sense because there was no dream tied to it. I never had a vision for my life. So since we didn't have a plan for our lives, guess what happens? When you don't have a plan for your life, you'll likely fall under the plans of someone else. And we fell into the plans of TDCJ.
Just to tag on that thought pattern, when I was 13 is when I took my first drink of alcohol. And I was working with my friends in high school and their brothers during the hot summer.
Right.
And we were freshmen going into sophomore year. And we were drinking Gatorade all day, Gatorade and water all day out of this one ice chest.
Right.
And at the end of the day, they brought this different cooler out.
Right.
And it didn't have Gatorade and water in it. And all of a sudden they're all pulling beers out.
Right.
And I'm like, my heart started beating really fast. And I'm like, man, I don't want to do this. I've never drank alcohol before. And do I go against my mom and dad's teachings? We grew up in a family where, there was no pause live TV, skip the commercials, none of that. So when a beer commercial came on when we were growing up, my mom and dad would run across the living room and cover our eyes so we wouldn't see it.
Right.
And so that day, my heart started beating. Do I honor my mom and dad, or do I become better friends with these guys?
Right.
Because we just moved to the new school, trying to impress people. And all of a sudden, everybody had a beer in their hand except me. I was still deciding.
Right.
But before I could make a decision for myself, someone else made a decision for me and threw me the beer.
Oh, wow.
So if you don't have a plan for your life, you're going to fall under somebody else's plan. If you don't make your own decision, somebody else is going to make it for you. And that one decision that I didn't want to make myself and allowed somebody else to make for me started me down a path.
Right.
I say in the documentary, one decision
Right.
can decide the direction your life
Absolutely.
goes. And that one decision led me down a path that led me to 5 DWIs.
Man,
So you're so right. If you don't have vision, you don't have a plan for your life. And that's the key. These guys and in the state, honestly, I mean, they're just, I think they mean well, but I think they would rather just house sit us, babysit us, and because they need prisoners to come back in.
I mean, that's the honest truth.
They do.
Yeah.
If prisoners didn't come back and judicial system didn't send prisoners to prison, all the 140 prisons would have to close down.
Right.
How many people would lose their jobs? How much revenue would the state be out of?
Right.
So there's a part of our system that we probably don't comprehend and don't understand because it's the business side.
Right.
The business side says there's bad people out there that we need to put in prison to generate money.
Right. Absolutely.
I won't get into all that, but
well, yeah, we're not going to get into all of that. And then that's so true because I can come to prison and you can teach me how to weld. I can get college degrees in I can increase on my skill set. But even in that, faith without vision, think about how profound this is. Imagine having faith, which many of us in prison do have. But imagine faith without vision versus faith with vision. It changes the whole ballgame. And that's why great leaders have to come in and be able to draw the vision out of a person. That's where the coaching aspect comes in. The one thing I realize now in coaching is I don't focus so much on telling you what to do. I focus on drawing the plan out of you. And no matter how long it takes, I have to be more strategic on asking the great question. For so many of us, we're so adept to just correcting, teaching, preaching, and we get that. But how do you know this is just a borrowed belief? We talk about, I love this quote. It says, you cannot travel without until you first travel within. I come from a culture where borrowed beliefs is so prevalent. I mean, you don't know who has borrowed belief and you don't know who has real internalized belief. But somewhere in the borrowed belief, it has to become internalized. That's where transformation begins. But think about how many men adapt to the faith and they flourish for a season and they're stripped away from that environment and they don't know what to do. They have no idea what to do. And not only that, let's talk about how a lot of church ministries are gung-ho about coming in the inside. But then when we come out, it's kind of like, whoa. We weren't prepared for this part of this. I mean, it was good when we went in there to encourage you to operate in your gift, but now that you're coming out and maybe you want to share your testimony or be a part of maybe church leadership. I mean, you were good in prison leadership. I don't know about getting you involved in church leadership. Let's talk about that. I mean, did you have any struggles with that?
Yeah, it's tough because when you rise to the top in prison and as far as leadership and maybe inside a Christian church, inside prison, it's tough because in your mind, you think it's going to be like that on the outside.
Right.
But it's not, a lot of churches can't or don't want to have the liability of having a felon on their staff. And some churches don't even want the liability of having a felon in their congregation. There's, especially in the area where the inmates have committed a sexual offense.
Right.
They feel a lot of rejection from the church. They're on parole and parole says they can't even go to church. And then they get off of parole and they try to get plugged in because they know they need to be. And then some churches even have it in their insurance policies that if a sex offender self-proclaims that he's in your congregation, that you have to go up and let your congregation know that you have a sex offender in your church. And all that's going to do is, and no pastor wants to do that.
Right.
So that's going to, you take a chance of losing half your congregation, or kick one family out of your church. And it's tough. It's tough because I was visited, or I was a part of a larger prison ministry that came in, and I connected with the leadership. And the leadership said, when you get out, call us. We want to connect with you on the outside. And I did. And when I called them with the card that they gave me, they said, "What are you doing calling us? We don't give our number out to inmates." And I said, "Well, how do I have your card?" And so it was very discouraging. 6 of the free world volunteers that came in that I connected with, only 1 ever wanted to follow up on the outside.
Right.
And it's one thing I love Mike Barber Ministries, and they are very good at connecting after they get out with the guys. In fact, they're like, "Hey, we want to connect with you on the outside, and we want you to come back in with us." Right. But a lot of churches are scared. A lot of churches will go in to minister, and they're really, like you said, gung-ho about prison ministry. But the follow-up when they get out, it's very, it's almost like people are afraid. They're afraid of us. They're afraid to hire us. They're afraid to let us live at their apartment complex.
Right.
They're afraid to let us sit by them at church. They're afraid to minister to them.
Right.
When I first got out of prison at Trinity, I love my church, but it just seemed like there was a trend where when I got out, if there was anybody that had tattoos, smelled like alcohol, looked like they did drugs, or said they've been to prison, they stop what they're doing. They bring them all to me. Right. "Oh, we want you to meet J Dan." And I love that.
Right.
And I want to connect with every one of those people. But the whole church, everybody in the church is equipped to minister to everybody, or should be.
Doesn't the Bible speak on that on Matthew 25? Yeah. When I was naked, you came and clothed me. When I was thirsty and hungry, you came and visited me. Come on. Hebrews 13:3 says, "Remember the prisoners as if you were chained with them." I mean, oftentimes, I easily connect with other people that have incarcerated loved ones, and the first thing they do is they're just like, "Hey, can you help this person? Can you help my family? Can you help my loved one?" And it's like, are we the only ones that are able to minister to returning citizens? And why is that? Are we the only ones that are able to connect? Maybe we are at a certain level, but I think that's where we have a passion to really train and cultivate leaders in the prison ministry to become more effective, because we come from that culture. We understand what goes on in there. We understand that there's so much comparison and competition in that culture. I love sharing this part too, is vision cultivates authenticity. Vision cultivates authenticity, and authenticity breeds confidence. I'm so confident today from the previous times that I got out, like the true encounter that I had with the real me now, the authentic Twan Nguyen. You can't tell me nothing else. I mean, I'm dangerous now to this world because I don't bow down to any limiting beliefs. I don't, because of the confidence I have. I speak it. I mean, you can literally feel my confidence when you're around me, because I'm so assured of who I am and who God has called me to be. I know my niche. I know where my value is today. And for so many inmates, they lack that part of it because they're still caught up in the comparison game, because no one has actually really helped them tap into their potential. And so they're looking at everyone else. I'm talking about in ministry too. I'm talking about in ministry because the body is suffering from a schism, even in prison culture, and it looks good, but the body's not operating at its full potential because we're not calling out everybody out in their position. And so many people in the body, in prison and out of prison, are misplaced because they're operating in a level that they're not called to be in. And we're not really developing leaders. We're just basically I mean, if you think about it, that's where leadership development is so crucial.
So we titled this Gaps, and we know there's a leadership development gap. I think another gap is lack of coaching. You know, we talk about the coaching life. There's life coaches,
Right.
but who coaches the families that have loved ones in prison?
Right.
Who coaches those parolees when they get out?
Absolutely.
You know, and I think that if the people going in to minister aren't connecting them when they get out, and all these guys connect with is the parole officers who
Right.
are not trying to connect.
Right.
They're trying to correct. And really, honestly, even in the secular world, take faith out of it. When an inmate gets out, no matter how, it didn't matter whether he worked for the warden inside.
Right.
Doesn't matter if he worked for, like I did, the director of TDCJ
Right.
up in Huntsville. When you get out and you're sitting across from that parole officer, you're low man on the totem pole again.
Right.
You know, you're not anybody. You're not a warden's boy anymore. You're nothing. You're, you know, in fact, the way the parole officers speak to us shows that they're not trying to connect. They're trying to correct, because they say, if you don't do this, I'm going to send you back. If you don't do this, I'm going to send you back. If you don't pay your fees, I'm going to send you back. If you don't get a job soon, I'm going to send you back. If, you know, and all they are doing is trying to correct and not connect. And, you know, when you're talking about Jesus and connection, and people are afraid to talk to us and minister to us because maybe they don't relate.
Right.
Relate means that you have some things in common, you know, hobbies, things you do, worldviews. Jesus couldn't relate to any of the people that he healed or told to go and sin no more. He couldn't relate to them because he wasn't sick in his body.
Right.
And he'd never sinned. But that didn't stop him from connecting with them.
Right. That's a good point there.
So even though he couldn't relate, didn't give him a reason or excuse not to connect.
Right.
So the church body out here, even though they may not be able to relate to our past,
right,
they should still, like Jesus did, have a desire and need to connect.
Absolutely.
So
let me just define what connecting is. Connecting is having the ability to, number one, identify, and two, to relate with me so that you can gain influence. And that's what it is.
And one way we're trying to connect is coaching.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of guys get out and they're lost. They don't know what to do. The church as a whole doesn't know how to coach them. Parole doesn't know how to coach them. And so we feel like, as John Maxwell team members, the reason we're doing what we're doing is because we want to try to, the families are lost. You don't have a transitional house, but I'm sure you've connected with families that have loved ones in prison. I mean, every week, right, I spend time on the phone with families that don't know what to do.
Right.
How do I do this? What do I do that my loved one's in prison? How do I go see them? How do I go visit them? Now they're getting out. How do I put a parole plan together? How do I put a plan of action together? Right. They're telling them he can't live at home. So where can we send them? They're telling us this, they're telling us that. And the families have no place to go. And right. I think prison transformational coaching, you know, we coach them on the inside, but we also coach them on the outside as well as their families. I think is a gap.
Absolutely.
It's a gap.
Absolutely.
that we're trying to fill.
And I kind of use this as an example. Like, I spent, my family spent $1,600 this previous incarceration hiring a parole lawyer. Okay. And so why did we hire a parole lawyer? Because I had a 16-year sentence and I wanted to come home real soon. And so my view was, if we can get a good parole attorney, maybe she can present a good package together to present the parole board so your baby boy can come home early, right? That's the ultimate game plan with a parole lawyer. Everyone wants to come home early. No one's concerned about development. They just want to get out. But so many people hire these attorneys that really just, I don't even know how successful they are. But I mean, you have your family members get out with no transformation. I mean, they get home and they come back to prison literally in a matter of no time because the parole attorney was able to bring him home early, but how long will he be able to stay home? Because he was never developed into becoming the leader that he was supposed to be. He had the faith aspect. Yeah, that's great. but he didn't know how to lead his family and he didn't know how to lead himself.
That's good. That's so true. And that is what's lacking, and one of the things we're trying to teach at Forgiven Felons with the guys come through there is leadership, and some of the things that we're trying to do. Earlier this year, we read a book called Emotional Intelligence because
2.0.
Yeah. And because managing your emotions well is a sign of a good leader.
Right.
And what was interesting in the book, it showed stats on how much more money people made with higher EQ, emotional quotients.
Right.
And it was like $1,300 more per point. So every point higher your emotional your EQ was, that's how much more money you made. And the most interesting point was in an organization where there was entry level people, mid management, and CEOs. The entry level people had scores in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
The mid level management had scores in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
The CEOs and the executive management team had scores in the 60s.
Wow.
And there's 4 components to that, which is self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. And the difference was the leaders of that organization were all the managers.
Right.
They had the highest EQ.
Wow.
And so we're doing everything we can at our transitional houses to develop leaders, because the more you develop leaders, like you said earlier, wherever they go, you're going to have to lead yourself. If you don't know how to lead yourself, you're not going to be able to lead others. You're going to have to lead your family.
Right.
You're going to have to lead at work most of the time.
Right.
And then if you get lucky and are able to lead at a church and a ministry organization, you got to lead well. So there's that leadership gap is huge, but we need more ways to do that. And I think coaching is going to fill in that gap.
And so I think another gap that we have is we focus so much on the quantity, we miss out on the quality. And so when we're so focused on the numbers game, we miss out on developing the top leaders. I mean, everybody's called to be a leader in their area of function, but I realize now that it's looking for the potential men that can actually be equipped so you can delegate them and empower them. I mean, true leadership is empowerment. Leadership is just power. You can have a position of power, but are you really empowering the inmates to successfully come back to society? That's what we're looking at, is how do I actually empower them versus telling them, and that's all part of coaching and leadership. I remember I was talking to one of my correction officers one day at the unit, and I was just sharing him. We were talking about John Maxwell leadership and how he's literally impacted over 7 million leaders worldwide in over 196 countries. And one thing he told me was this. He said, John Maxwell is great. I mean, he's great in business leadership and all that. And this is what he told me that was literally the aha moment in my life. He says that the leadership stuff is great on the outside. It's never going to work in prison. I mean, it's not going to work in prison. That leadership stuff doesn't work in there. And right then and there, I knew my calling right there, because my calling was to be that leadership catalyst in impacting prison culture, because that was the missing piece. People don't believe in inmates as leaders.
No,
they don't. So why would they invest in leadership with us? And remember what I said in the beginning, the way people see you, the way people see us is the way they treat us. And if they don't see us as leaders, they're not going to treat us as leaders. And then since they don't treat us like leaders, we'll never become that, because of the self-image that is tied down to it. It doesn't matter how much I say that I'm a leader. If I don't really have a healthy self-image about myself, I will never be able to outperform how I see myself. You'll never be able to outperform your self-image.
That's true. That's true. And I think I shared this with you the other day. It boggles the mind why they don't teach more leadership in prison. But again, if they taught leadership in prison, people wouldn't come back. And prison is a business. And the most important part of a business is to have repeat clientele. And so one of the reasons they probably won't ever get too big in leadership in prison is because if you create leaders, develop leaders, they're going to go out there and lead, and they're not going to come back. Same reason a long time ago they started taking all the free weights out of prison.
Right.
You know, they just put those little machine weights. There's a difference between an isolation lift and a compound lift. A compound lift uses more muscles, and it makes you stronger all the way around, a more balanced approach to lifting weights. An isolation lift, not the free weights, but the machine weights, those are isolation. They only work one muscle at a time.
Right.
And so they're taking all the free weights out and putting just those in, because they didn't want the inmates getting so strong, because they were afraid that they were going to be empowered. Okay. And all get together and do something that they couldn't stop.
Right.
And so in a spiritual sense, in a leadership sense, if you begin empowering them and building those compound muscles of leadership, you basically threaten the livelihood of your business.
Right.
At Forgiven Felons, we try to develop leaders so that they can move out and lead. Some transitional houses, they want to keep people there for a long time, just to keep that rent coming in.
Right.
You know, the only people that stay at our houses long term are the leaders, the ones that move into house managers.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
You know, and we meet with them weekly to do leadership development. But that's the thing, is I think it's hard for them to want to teach leadership because they're afraid of being outled.
Empowerment. And they don't want your guns to get any bigger. So this is like free weights we're working with now. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. And
they don't want your guns getting bigger. So they took away the free weights. We're working with machine weights now.
One of our house managers said, yeah, we got the free weights at Forgiven Felons.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
That's right.
So we got about maybe 10 minutes left. Here's what I want to do. This is not going to be what is that?
This lady says it boggles my mind why they don't teach more leadership in elementary school.
Absolutely.
That's a great point. That is such a great point, because that's where it begins. If you're not teaching it, if you're just teaching to the test, to pass the test, and you're not teaching true leadership at a young age, they're not going to know how to do it as they get older.
Absolutely.
They're not going to know. Do you know that one in five high school kids have been impacted by incarceration with a parent? One in five.
Right.
1 in 5. That blows me away. So
yeah. And so two of the greatest areas where leadership is lacked is, number one, in the prison culture, and two, within our youth. I believe that's right. I mean, because here's the thing. We can spend so much time on implementing new programs for prison reform, but what's going to happen is, without the leadership development in our youth in this generation, they're on their way to prison. And so the recidivism is never really changing, because as we're building on successful reentry, here comes another generation that's coming to prison because of the lack of vision and leadership development in their lives. They don't have a plan for their lives, so they fall under the plans of someone else.
Yeah. Yep. And do you know that a high school student that has a parent in prison is 5 times more likely to end up in prison themselves?
Wow.
But if we start teaching, like Deli said, start teaching leadership skills at a younger age, then maybe they will know how to lead themselves down a different path than their parents.
Absolutely. So here's what we want to do. We got about 10 minutes left before we got to shut down. Let's talk about what we are doing right now in our communities. I want to, as me and Jay talked about, we are prison transformational coaches. We got certified as John Maxwell speakers, coaches, and trainers, because we believe that leadership development and coaching was the missing element. I believe we're going to be the catalyst towards really helping prison reform in that area. So right now, I'm currently working on a 12 to 15 month leadership program for one of my units that I came from. And so some pretty cool things are just opening right now as I'm just making connections, me and Jay. But this is what we want to offer to anybody that's listening. You can tag, I want you guys to tag and share this to anyone that has a heart for prison ministry, tag and share of with any families that have incarcerated loved ones that need coaching. You know, we want to provide our services in the coaching aspect because we know that culture, and we can help. I really believe that we have strong testimonies of where we came from, and we dealt with every single thing in the prison system.
Yeah.
What we want to do is we want to actually do a prison ministry, prison transformational mastermind, and I'll give the details on that. So if anyone's interested in actually getting involved in really spending some solid time in a mastermind setting where we can really draw some great questions out for you guys and really help you develop a better plan of growth in the prison ministry. We really have a heart in training up leaders in prison ministry. So if you have anyone in your church that might be active in prison ministry leadership, hey, reach out to us. Reach out to us. I mean, that's the reason why we became coaches in leadership, is because we want to help make a greater impact in prison reform.
Yeah, and if you're a part of a church or even an organization that wants to get involved in prison ministry or know how to grow that culture in your church, and you want us to come do an in-person workshop at your church or
Absolutely.
anything, we're open to that. Because a lot of the churches have families that have been impacted by incarceration, and sometimes you don't even know who they are because a lot of them are ashamed. Right. A lot of them are ashamed to say, I have a son in prison, I have a husband in prison. And so most churches don't even know how to approach those families and help those families. And as we grow our wings and spread our wings out in the coaching, we want to focus on those families. We want to focus on those churches that would like some assistance, in building their prison ministry, building a prison ministry culture, and not just going on the inside, but also how to receive them when they come home. What to do when their parole says, they can't do this at the church. So how do we accommodate for that?
Right.
If you still want them to be involved, the parole stipulation says, well, you can't set foot on this church campus. How can you as a church still not ostracize that person, but keep them involved? Maybe start a small group on a Sunday morning with a streaming version of the church where you're starting your own little home church for people. Who knows? Yeah. But we'd like to help anyone, and would also I think we're also going to do another one of these soon.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to plan towards launching another broadcast pretty soon. We really wanted to jump and just really, instead of waiting around, we believe that there's so much we can bring to the table to really help everyone in this particular area, because prison reform is such a hot topic in these days with what President Trump's doing, I think, with the First Step Act. And so we just want to.
But what a lot of people don't know is that is only federal.
Right. A
lot of what presidents do is only at the federal level. We need to let it trickle down to the state level. Absolutely. And that's what we want to do too.
Yeah. So, hey, you guys, remember, tag and share. Hey, if you know anyone that would like for us to come speak, coach, or train their prison ministries, we are available. Just reach out to us. We are in Texas. So I'm from Houston.
Yeah.
Jay's from
Dallas Big area. D, DeSoto, the double D, DeSoto, Dallas.
Yeah. So we are currently residing in the big state of Texas. Yeah. But hey, we had a blast today just connecting with you guys. We'll respond to all the questions and comments. And man, you guys have a blessed day.
Last thing I want to say is North Texas Giving Day is coming up. It doesn't affect Twannies in South Texas, but it does affect all the nonprofits in North Texas. And Forgiven Felons is one of those, September 19th this year, 9/19/19. And it's a chance for you to find out all the nonprofits in North Texas. But we're going to bring awareness to our organization by showing the documentary again. Oh, yeah. That was made by our ministry, and not by our ministry. It's made by a university, and we premiered it in April, and we're going to show it again at the rally, North Texas Giving Day at Trinity Church in Cedar Hill from 7 to 9 p.m. And then after that, we're going to give away a car.
Wow. Actually, and I was there at the premiere, and it was awesome. You guys don't want to miss that.
And there's the third episode has never before footage in it. We got some new footage.
So can I qualify to win the car?
You already have a car. It's got to be somebody we're going to give it away either to somebody in our house, but a lot of the guys in our houses have cars already.
Right.
And then they're doing great. So whoever's in our house that qualifies, plus we're going to open it up to churches in the Metroplex that maybe has somebody in need that's been impacted by incarceration in their congregation.
Right.
Nominate them, get a hold of us, and we will add them to the, and then your church buys raffle tickets basically for that person.
Wow.
So every dollar you give on North Texas Giving Day towards the guy that's in your church that needs a vehicle, then that increases their chance of winning
the
car.
So. Oh wow, that's awesome. That's awesome right there, Jay. Forgiven Felons Ministry. I love it. I love it. Hey, remember, look, at one point or another, we've all violated the 10 Commandments in one way or another. We've all been convicted of a felony under God's precepts. And the only difference between other people and us is we actually got caught. You know, and so remember what I said in the beginning, as we just make we come to a close. The way people see you is the way they treat you. And the way people treat you is how often most people become. Think about this next time when you encounter someone that is a returning citizen, on how you treat them. Because how you treat them really matters. You can't make me feel important when deep down inside you believe I'm a nobody, because people can feel that. So I want to leave you guys with that, because man, it makes the biggest difference in the world. Me and Jay, we really want to change the narrative in how people not only receive us, but we want to build the confidence back up in returning citizens.
Yeah.
So,
you know, just a quick story on that last point. Ananias in the New Testament was tasked with going to pray for Paul, for Saul. He still knew him as Saul.
Right.
And he was nervous. He was a murderer.
Yeah, absolutely.
By our days, he'd be a serial capital murder.
Yeah.
And God said, go pray for him. Go lay hands on him and pray for him. And he didn't want to. He was scared.
He didn't.
Because of his perception, how he saw
Absolutely.
Saul.
That's good. That's good.
But when he was able, by the help of God, to change how he saw Saul,
right,
he began to see Paul. And so if you see somebody, like he said, if you see somebody and you find yourself having a bad self-image of them, they may have a bad self-image of themselves, but you can help them change their self-image by speaking different words over them, changing the way you see them. So you can help every inmate getting out of prison have a better life, have a better view of themselves by how you view them and the things you speak. The things you speak over yourself and others are very powerful.
Absolutely. So you guys be blessed. We gotta tune on out now. So we'll be looking forward to maybe a future broadcast. Hey, and on the feed today, just ask questions. Ask questions on what kind of topics that we should discuss in the next broadcast. And we'll try our best to really come up with statistics and come up with a nice plan on how we can help you guys in moving forward. Okay. So you guys be blessed.